Hey friends, it's Brandon with Mortal Survival. Sorry if I sound a little sick today. The weather here is so up and down. I think everyone in the State's having the same sinus issues. But this info is so vital that I thought it was too important to sit on for another day. A lot of us have heard about the pending food shortage, but many of you don't know that a major food shortage of global proportions may be just 10 weeks away. Now, before you click away from this video, I think we owe it to ourselves to stay informed about this potentially life-altering event. According to Zelensky, who we all know by now, Russia has blocked almost all ports and all maritime opportunities for Ukraine to export food. We're talking grain, barley, sunflower, and more. Zelensky further goes on to state that there will be a crisis in the world if we do not unblock the routes for Ukraine and do not help the countries of Africa, Europe, and Asia which need these food products. Zelensky said that if Ukraine does not regain control of the contested southern ports, the world will face a difficult situation. The country produces a substantial amount of global food supply, including between 25 and 30% of the world's grain supply, along with Russia. We all know the problems we're having with Russia, and they're not going to help out any. According to Sarah Minker, the CEO of Grow Intelligence, the world has only 10 weeks worth of wheat left to deal with the crisis, and without aggressive global actions, we stand the risk of an extraordinary amount of human suffering and economic damage. Last week, Andrew Bailey, governor of the Bank of England, suggested Britain was facing an apocalyptic level of food price inflation. World Bank Group President David Malpass said food prices increases are having a devastating effect on the poorest and most vulnerable. Okay, so Zelensky specifically mentioned Europe, Asia, and Africa, so some of you are thinking since you live in America, you're safe, right? Well, there's some experts who don't expect Americans will have to deal with the food shortage to the same level or degree as those in other countries. We'll still have our own problems and issues to contend with. For example, I've got grandkids who don't have baby formula. Just recently, I had to shop several different stores just to find chicken breast. I don't know how many times I went looking for something at the store only to find it's not available, and you've probably had the same issue. But for the sake of arguing with the experts, let's just assume for a minute that we won't see a food shortage. All the food we're ever going to need is going to be readily available, except we just won't have the money to pay for it. Isn't that the real problem we're facing? From February 2021 to February 2022, food prices increased by 7.9%, which was the biggest jump in the last 40 years. Combine this increase with the increase in cost of fuel, which has increased by 45% in the past year, and you've got yourself one hell of a dilemma. Let's see what else has increased lately. How about cost of energy, which the New York Times reports is up by about 12%. I mean, the list goes on and on. How about the cost to buy a new car or even a used one? Or have you gone out to eat lately? What used to cost me about $15 at a restaurant now runs about $22, which is another 31% increase. And it seemed to have happened just basically, overnight the last few weeks. Again, everything today falls into the cost more money category. So back to the pending food shortage, which may or may not affect the USA, I don't think it really matters. Number one, if there's any food shortage at all, anywhere in the world, the US will be indirectly affected. This may come in the way of our government spending or sending billions of dollars that we don't have to a country that wouldn't help us even if we were just hours away from dying, or we'll face further supply chain issues if societal norms in supplying countries become unhinged due to famine and starvation. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying at all to make light of the situation, just trying to talk through some of the outcomes that we're likely to face. If in fact we do see a food shortage here in the USA, which I fully believe we will, then we'll have a wide range of other problems to deal with. I mean, look at the baby formula shortage and the issues that's causing. What could get worse than babies not getting the nutrition they need? Well, how about a starving military? And not that that's necessarily worse than a starving baby, but it's going to be my next point. That won't happen though. The military won't starve, as our military is too important and may be needed to keep the peace when this shit hits the fan. So what this tells me is if we have a food shortage situation, it's going to be compounded for the general population. Much of the available food will be provisioned for government use to feed our soldiers and politicians and their families as well. So let's go back to what I opened this video with, and that's the disruption of 25% of the world's grain supply, which brings me to point number two. As the country realizes they don't have enough food for their own population, they'll suspend exports. As of today, 22 countries have already cut back 10% of their trade in food items, and some countries have completely cut off exports altogether. So when the UN Secretary General warns of a global food shortage, I think we have to stop and take notice. A statistic that really caught my attention came from a UN report that indicates nearly 2.37 billion people, or 30% of the global population lacked access to food in 20 or adequate food in 2020. This is a rise or an increase of 320 million people in just 1 year. Ladies and gentlemen, start doing your own research on this food shortage crisis we're about to face. From the United Nations to brilliant CEOs, politicians, and presidents of major monetary funds, far too many people are reporting that this may be a near doomsday event. 10 weeks is the food reserve we have to depend on. Don't wait. Use the next 10 weeks to start stocking up on canned and freeze-dried food. If things turn out better than what's being predicted, then you'll just be a couple steps ahead of the ballgame. Having several months of food available for you and your family for any given disaster situation is a responsible thing to do. Remember, you can't count on the government to save you. Our politicians and world leaders will save themselves and retreat to their fully stocked bunkers while we continue to fight amongst ourselves to survive. Now, I don't have any dog in this fight whatsoever. I don't own a warehouse full of goods and supplies and food items I'm trying to sell you. I'm just trying to impart on you some of the information that I've learned, that I've researched, so that you have a better understanding of the crisis that we may be about to face. Whether you're an American or not, and I truly do appreciate my viewers from other countries who support me, we're all facing some extreme situations that should warrant extreme concern. From the monkeypox virus, which has already been detected in several countries around the world, to continuing supply chain issues, ongoing issues with China, a nuclear-armed and aggressive Russia, and Iran, who's just weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for a nuclear warhead, to the monkeypox virus, we're living in an unprecedented time. And I know I mentioned the monkeypox virus twice, but this really has me confused and worried. I mean, we're still fighting COVID, which seemed to have come from nowhere. It just came out of left field and killed more than 6 million people worldwide. And now we're dealing with another relatively unknown virus that has come out of Africa and very seldom ever escapes into other countries. As of today's date, there are between 80 and 120 cases of the monkeypox virus detected in 12 different countries. This is unheard of, guys. While it's not a huge number, never in the history of the monkeypox virus, which was first discovered in a human in 1970, has it been found in so many places outside of Africa. In 2003, there was a small outbreak in the USA caused from a pet prairie dog that had been housed next to imported African animals. Since then, only 2 more cases were detected in the USA in 2020 and 2021. The World Health Organization reports that the case fatality ratio has been around 3 to 6%. Now, this is a whopping number when compared to the death rate of COVID, which was less than 1.5%. So if COVID killed over 6 million people, how many people would the monkeypox virus kill? Twice as many? 3 times as many? Now, I don't think it will become a pandemic like COVID, but it's prudent of all of us to keep an eye on it and exercise caution if it starts to spread. Talking about prudence, I recommend that everyone start preparing for a future that may not be as fortunate or abundant as the past. Far too many indicators point towards likely hardships for all of us, regardless of where we live. If you're like me, you've already felt the sting of increased costs of everything we buy. If we see any indication of food shortages, prices will go even higher. As the cost of diesel fuel increases, so too does the cost of everything we purchase. There doesn't seem to be end in sight, and if predictions are correct, we haven't seen the worst of it. As you can afford it, start stocking up on items. I wouldn't max out your credit cards or borrow money to, but as you have a little extra cash, start stocking away on some items for a rainy day or some type of a major incident like a food shortage that we may be about to face. Get ahead of the game and have items readily available so that you're not standing in a soup line or dealing with government red tape that will limit your ability to buy food and other essential items for your family. I recommend that you have at least 6 months' supply of food for each individual in your house. The daily food supply should allow for a minimum of 1,800 calories for a male and about 1,500 calories for a female. And don't forget to stock up for family members who may show up on your doorstep when the shit hits the fan. Ideally, they would bring their own food, but this won't always be the case for every family member, and we know that. For more tips, advice, and training to help you survive the unexpected, stay with me, watch my videos, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell so you can be notified when I post new content. Until next time, be safe, be prepared, and be ready.